Okay, so I need to talk to you about this. Alright, so I started this book. I didn't finish the other one. I didn't do it. I didn't finish Powerless. I DNF with like 10 chapters to go. Have been vicariously living through everyone else's, like, reviews of Powerless, and so I got this book for free from my library. Because there ain't no way I'm spending more money on this. It's not happening. But let me tell you, right now, I am writing down all of my notes. I have quite a few so far. But let me tell you about it. Okay, so chapter one, which technically isn't chapter one, it was the prologue from Kai's POV. They said sticky buns 4 times. I'm keeping a tally of how many times they say sticky bun each chapter, and then I will update you at the end of this video or a group of videos or whatever I'm doing, how many times they actually said sticky buns. I will update you. But first of all, the dedication of this book was strange. It was strange and peculiar. The first one was like, to every girl who's ever felt powerless. That's fine. The dedication in this book I shall read to you. For the reckless souls who dare to love and be loved. Brother, what? I'm so sorry. I'm so confused. Secondly, instead of getting a map of Dor, which is apparently the town that we're going to be spending the majority of our time in, or the desert, and instead of getting a map of that, we've just gotten a map of the entire kingdom, which doesn't matter anymore. We also have this family tree of the Azur family. It's very complicated. It doesn't look like a family tree, and that's because it's not. It's a family rose bush, but still, like, I don't know where it starts. I think it starts up here. I think this is the top. I think this is where it starts, and it kind of just. But like then again, I'm not sure. I just know that this is where it ends because this is Kai and Kit. I am gonna start with probably just reading my notes to you because that's easier. There was a line that said "Stolen bliss is smothered chaos." I don't know what that means. I'm confused. Stolen bliss is smothered chaos. I don't know if that means anything. I don't think it does. That doesn't make sense to me. Apparently they said the same thing in 3 different ways. I'm trying to remember exactly what that is. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, I found it. On the first page it says, "A sleeping castle is comforting. Solitude is rarity among royals." Royal. I almost allow myself to laugh at the title. I frequently forget what I was before what I became. A prince before the enforcer, a boy before the monster. But today I am no one. Today I simply get to be who I should have been. No, wait. Today I simply get to be with who should have been. That was hard, and I made a note about that too. That it's hard to read. The sentences are a mess to read. He's sitting on the countertop again during this book, and I made a note of that. That was an issue I had with the last book, was that he was covered in blood and sitting on the countertop, and I really didn't like that. And he's sitting on the countertop again. At least this time he's not covered in blood, but he's still up there, and he should not be up there. He should be off of there. So Gale comes back. Gale makes an entrance again. For those of you who don't remember, Gale is the cook, the head chef, baker lady. And he says that Gale all but raised him. And then later he says, Gale raised me more than my parents could. And I'm like, so did she or didn't she? First of all. And how was the royal family okay with this? Second of all, that is my second point. How is the royal family okay with this? Because typically, royals will have wet nurses for the babies, and then they will have, what do you call it? Kind of what Mary Poppins was to the Banks children, a governess. They'll have like a governess of sorts for their older children. If the king and queen either can't or won't take care of them, that's who usually raises their children. And you're telling me that the kitchen maid in the back, who I think is black coated, she feels very black coated. She wasn't the first time I read this, but this time reading this, she feels very black coated. I mean, you're telling me that the kitchen maid in the back is raising your future enforcer? Like, you're telling me that she's raising your son, and you're just, like, okay with that? I don't know. And then they bring up Sticky Buns again. Sticky Buns is brought up, I kid you not, at least 4 times. in the same paragraph. It is mind-boggling how many times they can bring up sticky buns and eat nothing else. And this is the first time, maybe this isn't the first time, because like I said, I DNF'd with 10 chapters left in the first book, because I just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. This is the first time we're learning about Ava. Ava is Kit and Kai's sister. Why her name starts with an A and not a K? I don't know. Who birthed Ava? I don't know. Whether or not she's older or younger, I don't know. I haven't gotten there yet. Ava was never brought up. Instead, they have Jax, who knows what happened to Jax at this point. I don't know. I don't know what happened to Jax. I'm so confused. So confused. So conflicted, because when you brought up Jax in the first book as your adopted brother, couldn't you have brought up some sort of line of he tries to fill the hole that was left? You know, give some sort of like foreshadowing, some sort of little tiny, little, just one line to sort of hint at it, because you didn't have to bring it up. Like, you didn't have to bring up Ava fully until this book, but you could have hinted at her. Something, give us something. But no. It's brought up right here. Brought up here. So he takes the sticky bun to Ava's grave. Apparently, Ava is sleeping 6 feet under a willow tree, and he gives her the sticky bun and puts a match in it, calls it a birthday cake. I guess that's what I was getting from this. And that brings us to chapter 1. Like the actual chapter 1, like not just the prologue, the actual chapter 1, which I'm calling chapter 2 in my notes right here. Double-sided notes. Triple-sided notes. We got a lot to go through. The first sentence of this book was good. Of this chapter was good. I'm going to read it to you. My blood is only useful if it can manage to stay inside my body. I thought we were going to go somewhere funny with it after that. I thought we were going to be like, my blood now is currently on the floor, which is not very useful. But no, instead we went, my mind is only useful if it can manage to not get lost. My heart is only useful if it can manage to not get broken. Well, it seems I've become utterly useless then. I hate that for us. As a community, I hate that for us. I mourn for what we could have had, because it could have been funny. It could have been. Lauren is funny when she tries not to be. She's poetic when she tries not to be. Don't try too hard. Okay? You're giving try hard, and that's what this is giving, is try hard. I hated that. And then there there's a lot of useless alliteration, which they're like useless in the fact where it says, like, in book 1 it was like, she is cold, she is cunning, she is completely able to be my undoing, or something like that. But in this case it is, the mere sight of the familiar floor floods. Hold on. Dyslexic had to catch up for a moment. Floor and floods did not need to be in the same sentence, let alone that close together. Okay, you could have said anything other than floods. The mere sight of the familiar floorboards it says floods me with memories, but you could literally use anything else and say floorboards instead of floor, because that gives you at least another different, like, syllable, like, letter. Because you could say the familiar floorboards flood me with memories, and that would be easier to read than familiar floor floods. You catch my drift? There's a huge run-on sentence after that, so, like, this whole sentence, let me read you this whole sentence, okay? The mere sight of the familiar floor floods me with memories, and I fight to blink away the fleeting images of small feet atop big booted ones as they step in time to a familiar melody. Oh my gosh! Oh my goodness! Periods! Please! Periods are so useful in more than one context. There was a single comma in that entire thing, and it was horrible. I hated it. I hated every second of it, okay? So that was awful, and I wish to relieve myself of that as quickly as possible. So we're going to move on. Shake is used twice in the same sentence, right after our run-on one. So it is, I shake my head, trying to shake the memory from it, despite desperately wishing I could dwell on the past. You didn't need to say all that. You didn't need to say all that. You didn't need to say all that. You didn't need to say all of that, okay? You could have gone, I shake my head, trying to get rid of the memories that play. You know, like, you didn't shake twice? Twice in the same context? I shake my head, trying to shake the memory. You don't say. You don't say. That is wild. That is wild. From that, it moves immediately on to counting. So we go 16, 17, 18. I smile, ignoring the pain that pinches my skin. Found you. Okay, all right. There is a line in this that she is bleeding, I guess, or was bleeding. Like I said, I DNF'd. Anyway, this was fun. Kind of. I liked this. It was, the floor seems to be as stubborn as I am, refusing to budge. She means the floorboards. So she's trying to get to the secret, like, hiding compartment under the floor in her house. Okay, that is the context. I would have admired its resilience if it weren't a piece. Wait, sorry. I would have admired its resilience if it weren't a damn piece of wood. I don't have time for this. I need to get out of here. A frustrated sound tears from my throat before I blink at the floor, blurting, I could have sworn you were the secret compartment. Are you not the 19th floorboard from the door? I stare daggers at the wood before a hysterical laugh slips past my lips, and I tip my head back and shake it at the ceiling. Plagues, now I'm talking to the floor, I mutter, further proof that I'm losing my mind. That's where you lost me. Okay, when you laugh at yourself and then say, oh my goodness, I'm talking to the floor. I'm losing my mind. Like, brother, sister, they, themer, get out. You lost me. It was kind of funny. I talk to stuff all the time. If I bump into a chair, I apologize to it, okay? It's a normal human experience, but you don't acknowledge it, okay? If you do something like that, if you talk to inanimate objects, don't acknowledge it. Move past. It did bring me out of it again, because I was getting into it. I was like, oh, maybe this one is better, because this is comedy right now. Like, I was getting kind of like a smirk. Like, I wasn't downright like, but I was like, that's okay. After that, there's apparently another run-on sentence. Lord, have mercy on my soul. Okay? This book is a dyslexic's nightmare. It is so hard to read. And she had actual editors now. Simon & Schuster actually, allegedly, edited this. There's this line right here. My skin is splattered with slices, covered in cuts. Are we okay? Is the writing community alright? Is everyone good? Can I get a check-in from everyone in the back? Like, are we okay? She's back on the floor again, because apparently the board she was trying to, like, pry up is the wrong board. Who would have thunk? For a girl who's supposed to be like Sherlock Holmes, she really isn't that smart, like, at all. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand how we keep flip-flopping back and forth like this. She says, once again, I'm on the floor, prying up a beam to reveal a shadowy compartment beneath. I shake my head at myself, mumbling, it's the 19th floorboard from the window, not the door, Pay. I don't know about you, but I have never used my own name when talking to myself. I don't use my own name. You know? I just refer to myself as I. And if I have to refer to myself at all, I'm not referring to myself in the third person. And if I'm talking to myself, I'm definitely not referring to myself in the third person. And it's not like she in this book needed to refer to herself in the third person, because every time we start a chapter, the chapter is their name. The chapter is the POV that we're reading. So we know that this is Peyton's POV, so she didn't need to name herself. It's the 19th floorboard from the window, not the door, idiot. Like, I'll say that. She should have called herself stupid, because that's what she is. How is someone who is supposed to be trained in observing and knowing and remembering things not going to remember that it's the 19th floorboard from the window and not the door? That's stupid. I now remember that it is the 14th. I am Eminem coming for ya. I'm coming for ya. She reaches into the darkness, fingers curling around the unfamiliar hilt of a dagger. Her heart aches more than her body, wishing that the swirling steel, a handle of her father's weapon, she wishes that she had kept her father's knife. Let me explain to you everything that is in this secret compartment, okay? Secret tunnel. In this secret compartment is probably every weapon you could ever think of for a fantasy setting. Bow and arrow, knives, throwing stars. There's a whole bunch of stuff in this secret compartment. She's been back to this house, okay? She's been back to this house in the first book, and powerless, she came back to meet the resistance. Why she didn't take any of these weapons with her beats me. Why she didn't take them and sneak them back into the palace, who knows? She just didn't. She just refused to. And I refuse to believe that this character is actually as smart as they say that she's supposed to be. Because who? I'm losing it. Two chapters in, and I am losing it. God. There's a whole bunch of, like, talk about, like, the last book, about, like, how she killed the king and stuff. And then she's like, searing pain shoots down my raised arm, where the brand above my heart pulls taut with the movement. She was branded. I didn't know this. I DNF'd. Oh, for ordinary. I apologized for my visceral gut reaction. She takes a step, and another floorboard creaks. And she's like, huh, this floorboard has never creaked before. I wonder what's wrong. If every creaking floorboard were a compartment, our floor would be littered with them. Like, girl, please. She pulls back a second board, revealing another compartment. In this second compartment is a journal, which belonged to her father. And she says, I flip through it, recognizing the messy handwriting of a healer. We are generalizing all healers as having messy handwriting. I know that they're supposed to be like the doctors of this world, and it's like the stereotype that all doctors have messy handwriting, but like, no, she doesn't say, I flip through it recognizing the messy handwriting of my father. No. She says, I flip through it recognizing the messy handwriting of a healer. How do you know it just wasn't a different healer? Like, he wasn't the only healer in this world. Unless he was, but he wasn't. We know that he wasn't because of the previous book. Yes? She takes it, and then she scuttles to the door. Just, and it's quiet outside. And I'm like, yeah, no, duh, it's quiet outside. It's like midnight. No, it's not! It's noon! It's lunchtime! She's doing this in the middle of the day. It's quiet outside, but it's the middle of the day. She's doing this in the middle of the day. She's like, it shouldn't be quiet. Everyone should be, like, doing stuff because it's the middle of the day. I'm like, girl, why are you doing this in the middle of the day? She gets back because someone's, like, trying to break down the door, and she's like, how do I always find myself climbing up a chimney? Because she has to climb up a chimney again, because otherwise she can't get out. I'm like, do you not have a back door? Do you not have a back window? Because it says, not on the next page that there's only, like, 5 Imperials and Kai coming to chase her, and all of them are inside the house. I'm like, how did you just, like, not jump out a window and run? It's not like they have the house surrounded. This girl is so stupid. She climbs up a chimney, and everyone comes in, and she's like, his voice makes me chills, ugh. And I'm like, yeah, me too, like, this entire, yeah. The way that it's said that she's, like, sitting on this chimney is, how did she say? My feet planted on either side of me while bricks dig into my back. First of all, where is her backpack? Second of all, your feet are, like, up? Or are they out? Are you, like, feet, and then your back? Or are you, like, feet and back? Like, you know what? I don't get it. I don't understand. He starts talking to her like she's here, and she's like, oh my gosh, he knows I'm here. No, he doesn't. There was a bunch of expo dumping of stuff we already knew. Stuff you would have known from book 1, because these books didn't come out very, very far apart. You know what I mean? So, like, you could have read book 1 and then read book 2, and you should have retained some memory of book 1. But that's hard to say and hard to believe because nothing really happened in book 1. How she knew it was Imperials coming in with Kai, I have no idea. It could have been Special Forces, because the rules in this world don't matter, and nothing ever happens. Because it could have been a whole bunch of like silencers or something that work for the kingdom, but somehow it's Imperials. I don't know how she knows that, but we know that now. Blah 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 blah. And then her house just sets on fire. He says, a heavy sigh cuts through my thoughts. He sounds as tired as I feel. It's a good thing you're not here, he says softly, a tone I never thought I'd hear from him again, because I still haven't found my courage. And then my house bursts into flames. Did he leave first, or did he just like set the house on fire with him in it? Like, did he walk out and then set the house on fire and did it burst into flames? Because like, what sort of Imperials did he bring with him? Does he have fire wielding powder, and did he just go like, like King Ozai and just like bring a comet down on the house? Or like, how do you know that it burst into flames? You're inside a chimney. How did you know? This is making me so upset. And I am only one chapter into this book. Like, quite actually. And the reviews I've seen said that this book takes for freaking ever because they don't do anything but like walk around the desert and like banter. And I'm like, God, please spare me. But I'm making this for you, my little pumpkin, because brothers in Christ, I need content. I'm gonna be fair with you. But also, I was the first one on the hate train for Powerless, and it's not even a hate train. It's just a, what are we doing? I think it was the first one to make a rant review video about it. Not taking full credit, just taking some credit. And now I'm kind of late to the game for Reckless, so I kind of want to catch up. You know what I mean? I'll see you when I get through a couple more chapters. And I spoke quick. I spoke lickety snap with the one chapter. Half an hour for one chapter, and I was speaking at like Mach speed. Unbelievable. Talk to you later, bestie. Okay, I gotta tell you, I didn't even get through chapter 10 of Reckless before I had an absolute breakdown. And breakdown is being dramatic, but I'm anything if not dramatic. I was ranting to my sister about this. Venting isn't the correct word. Ranting is the correct word. I was ranting to my sister about this because nothing about this world, the continuity, makes sense. And I will explain that to you. But first, I'm going to give you a brief sort of like overview of how the rest of the chapters are going. Because I talked to you for half an hour about chapter 1. Half an hour of one chapter is insane. It's insane. And I'm going to try to match that energy, except I have been absolutely slothing around, okay, for the past like 2 weeks. I don't know what it is, but I've been absolutely like undead. Anyway, chapter 2 was short. Chapter 2 was Kai. There were like a couple things that, like, if you remember in the last section of this video where I was like in my clothes and not my pajamas, I said the chapter just ends. The chapter just ends with her house bursting into flames, and I was like, did he leave? Like, did he leave the house? Like, is he still in there? He was still in there. Like, the second chapter picks up exactly where the first one left off, just from his perspective, and he was still in the house when he set it on fire. How he set it on fire, I don't know, because none of the brawny, like, or not the Imperials that he brought with him were all brawnies. None of them had actual, like, useful powers. And so I'm sitting here like, how are you going to tell me that this girl is so good at escaping, is so good at everything that she does? How are you going to tell me that she's a Mary Sue, except it's all plot convenience? It was so convenient that he brought all the worst Imperials to come with him to hunt her down in her own house. It's so convenient for her. Chapter 2, I said, was short and pointless. That's about it. Chapter 3, I think it was Kai again. She ended up killing no, wait, this is a different chapter. Sorry. Chapter 3, I don't remember what happened. I don't remember what happened, except for the fact that it picked up kind of where chapter 2 left off. But from her perspective again, it's just a lot of perspective jumping back and forth. Like the same scene. That's why a lot of these chapters are so short, is because it's one scene, but it's broken up by like us going back, ping-ponging between their heads, and we didn't need it. We didn't need it. I will tell you what should have happened with this book, because I have watched other people's review videos about this book, and I'll tell you what would have made it better after I get through my rant about chapter like 8, I think it was. She kills someone in chapter 3. She kills someone, one of a guard, an Imperial. She kills it, and she's so like butthurt, like not butthurt, but like she's so she's so torn up about it. She feels so sorry. She's like crying. She feels so bad for killing this person. And it's like, my brother in Christ, you hate them. Like, you hate the elites. You hate from what I gathered in the previous book, she hates everything to do with the king and the kingdom and the power imbalance. Like, she hates everything to do with it. And so she's sitting here crying over this, like, guard that she killed, which she probably didn't need to do. We never saw the perspective of her having to kill this guard. We don't know if he caught her, if he saw her. We don't know if he was just simply in her way, wrong time, wrong place. We don't know what led to the point of her killing him. We just know that she did. And Kai ends up going, and he buries the guard, the Imperial, for her, because he's like, it's what she would have wanted. I buried Sadie for her. I need to bury this too, the girl that's so like afraid of death or hates death. And I'm like, this is a thing now? Like, she does? Like, I didn't gather that at all in the previous book. And then it brings up that she has this coat that belonged to her dad, and it's like so big and like drapey on her, and the sleeves are too long. And it's like, first of all, how big is your dad? He was a healer, not a brawny. I imagined him to be like super skinny, and she's supposed to be really muscular. She's supposed to be like strong and like kind of like, like a fighter. Like, how small is she, and how big was he that his coat is like I am not a large person, okay? I'm 5'4". I'm not a large person, but I'll wear my dad's jackets, and my dad's jackets aren't as big on me as Peyton's dad's jacket is on her. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Was he like 6'5" and she's like 5'3"? Like, that would make sense. But I don't think that's the case, because he was a healer. He wasn't anything special. Healers are special. Don't take that out of context. Chapter 4 is between Kai and Kit, and I don't know, this chapter was kind of weird to me. Like, I didn't really like understand the dynamic, and they read in the same voice. Kit and Kai read exactly the same, and there was a bunch of like lifeless laughter. Like, every other like sentence that they spoke was followed by like a lifeless or a humorless laugh, and it's like, you shouldn't be laughing that much, even if it is like lifeless or humorless or whatever, even if it is very forlorn. Like, this book and the previous book just had a lot of really pointless laughing. Like, that was like the only thing that they did, was they smirked or they laughed. And it's like, do we have other like expressions? Like, but they're talking about how Kai is talking about like how much Kit has changed, and I can see it. I can see that he's like this sort of like shell of who he was in the first book, and that's only because that Kit had the most character development in book 1. Out of all the characters in the first book, and I didn't even finish the first book, but even through that like section that I did read of the first book, Kit was the most well-rounded character. He had the most development. He had the most personality. Kai and Peyton's personalities simply revolved around each other. Like, if this book had a Bechdel test for whether or not a main female and main male lead could like interact without being all gushy and weird about it, they would have lost. They almost lost the regular Bechdel test, but that's not what this book is about. This book is a romance guised as a fantasy Hunger Games. That's what this was. Don't tell me it was anything but that, okay? So I can see like the slow like progression of Kit's character slowly unraveling. I can see that in him. I can't see that in anyone else, and I'll explain to you why in a minute. Chapter 5 In all the chapters up to this point, I started listing if they said sticky buns or if they just said sticky in general and how many times they said per chapter. So I'll have a count up somewhere in this video about how many times they said both. There was a sentence that didn't make sense to me because it said, I'm paraphrasing because I'm not going to search it up, but it was like, my neck aches as I lift my head to the setting sun above. So I'm like, how high is the sun? Because a setting sun should be like directly in front of you, especially if you're in a desert, because I know it's directly in front of her because she says in the next sentence it's lowering beyond the horizon. So like if you are like parallel to the plane that you're working on, yes, you would have to lift your head directly up. But she's not. She's walking, and so like the sun isn't above, the sun is in front, and you have to I'm losing my mind. I'm losing my mind. She's talking about how sunburnt she is. This is chapter 5, by the way. She's in the desert currently, and she didn't pack enough water. Girl, you're supposed to be smart. She is supposed to be the smart character. She was a psychic. That was her entire gig in the last book, was that she was supposed to be so smart and observant. She packed every single weapon under the sun and didn't bother to pack enough water to last her for 5 days in the desert. She brought her dad's jacket. She didn't bring a sun covering, and I realized later when she brought up the fact that she would have went across the shallows seas, ridiculous, to Isram. That's not what I noticed. Isram is so close to Islam. Thank you. But no, thank you. Take it back. She didn't. She would have went across the sea to Isram, except that the sea is out to kill them. So like everything surrounding this kingdom of Ilya is out to kill them. The sea is out to kill them because she's like, there's so many shipwrecks. I'm like, this would have been nice to know previously. Thank you. But the sea is out to kill them. The desert's out to get them. You can't cross the mountain. And the woods are full of like wild beasts, allegedly. We never saw them. All we saw was wolves. I would have liked to see more fantasy in this romantasy, but I get it. Some people's imaginations just aren't like that. It's like everything around this kingdom is out to kill them. Was it done on purpose? Were the elementals of this world, were the people with elemental powers able to just make everything so deadly? The people that can control water, are they controlling the sea? You know, like you need something. Was it just like this the entire time, or did it become like this after Ilya like secluded themselves from everyone and everything? And that'll come up. I will bring that up again. She tells us, okay, in this chapter about an interaction she had with the biggest snake she's ever seen, like in the desert. She tells us about this interaction. I would have loved to see it. It would have made this chapter more interesting. This chapter wouldn't have had anything to do with, there probably wouldn't have been as much alliteration in this chapter as there is. I've written down every single point of alliteration, and it is absolutely suffocating. But it probably would have been more exciting if we had seen this interaction with said snake, except for her just telling us about it, because she keeps going on and on and on about how much she's going to, like, how angry she is at Kai, but how much she misses him, like, how much blood is on her hands, how she feels like a murderer, how much she misses, like, she keeps repeating stuff that we've already heard previously, and nothing new is happening, and that's the issue that we had with the last chapter, is they'll just repeat over and over and over again what is happening without bringing in anything new. It's like same words, different font every single chapter. She thinks about Adina as she's falling asleep, and then the cliche of I didn't realize I was crying until, it's like, girl, don't cry. You're dehydrated. You are turning into a prune. Chapter 6. Apparently Peyton has freckles. That's like the first sentence in this book. First 3 sentences in this book. Apparently Peyton has freckles. Would have been nice to know previously in the first book, when we were talking about her eyes so much, that could have been an interesting thing to throw in there. But don't worry. He talked about her eyes in this chapter as well. He talked about her eyes. No. Sorry. This is the order of operations. Her hair, her eyes, her freckles. Wild. He's in a dream sequence in this thing. He's covered in blood. This was good. I'm gonna break honest with you. I know good writing when I read it. If I can read it. I'm dyslexic. Chapter 6 was him in a dream sequence confronting her and her confronting him. She more confronted him in a way. She's like, you're a murderer. You're, like all this really obvious. It's like, no way, Sherlock. Thank you for pointing out the obvious. But he's like panicking. He's covered in blood. It says, I'm dripping in death, meaning blood. Blood does not equal death. The other way, right? Blood does not, it not always. I mean, I get it. I get that it was just like part of the moment. It's supposed to be very like poetic. Blood does not always equal death. I'll let it slide. But I'm just saying. He wakes up. They're in the desert. They're following her across the desert to Dor. How they know she's going to Dor, they're just guessing at this point. But he's so confident that she's going to Dor. And I was telling my sister about that, like this neighboring neighborhood, kingdom, country, that this neighboring place is called Dor. Is it a city? I don't understand. I don't know how this works. Is it the kingdom of Ilya, or is Ilya the city? Or is Ilya just like the castle itself? Because you have loot. I don't get it. I don't understand. This is why you need world building. I was telling my sister that about this kingdom of Dor, and she's like, you mean the kingdom of Chair? So if I call it Chair, that's why. But somehow they just know that she's going to Dor or to Tando, which is Tando, whatever. Whatever. Apparently phantoms exist in this world. They exist in the world building and the continuity, so no one has like ghost like powers. No one can like shift through a wall or like talk to the undead. Like that would have been cool. I'm gonna break honest with you right now. I'm rewriting Powerless right now, and her power is that she can speak to the dead, although she doesn't know it's a power because she just thinks she's going crazy, which is something that is brought up in Reckless a lot, is that she calls herself crazy or like going insane because she's talking to herself. I am essentially just talking to myself. If this is going crazy, then girl, lock me up, okay? Because we've been crazy. I personally feel like it was kind of bordering on ableism. Now let me cook just a little bit, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But to be talking to yourself and then label yourself as insane or crazy feels low-key not great, especially because there are people in real life who schizophrenia, who schizophrenia is a real thing where they think they're talking to real people, and it is like an actual condition. So to just be talking to yourself or talking to the sand or just to keep yourself entertained, that is not going crazy. That is not losing your mind. That is not insanity. Okay? And I feel like saying it is not very socially aware of how it can affect people who do genuinely suffer from or survive with, because I don't want to say that everyone is suffering, but to people who actually have to live with conditions like this. So that is just my take on it. And she is not the only one who says this. She and Kai both have multiple times said that they're going insane, have said that they're going crazy. You can feel like you're going crazy. That is a perfectly valid feeling to feel. But this brings me back to the fact that everyone is written in the same voice. Like, I cannot tell characters apart, even though the chapter title is their name, is their POV. Sometimes you can't tell them apart because they are so similar in the way that they talk, in the words that they say, in their cadence. It is so similar. So yeah, that's just my big one, my big call out for chapter 7 right now. She is getting to the edge of chair or door or table or whatever, and she passes out. She's like on the brink of death. I think she low key says that she's like on the brink of death. Okay, we have a chapter break, and then she wakes up wrapped in a blanket that is the night sky. Her eyes haven't adjusted to the darkness, I guess. I don't know how that's possible, considering when you close your eyes, it's dark. But hey, let her cook, I guess. She's being carried, and she thinks it's Kai. Why that would be her first assumption, I don't know. If I passed out and then woke up in the arms of some stranger, I would probably be like, don't think I would be aware enough. Really, like after coming to, after passing out, typically you aren't aware. Not necessarily. I mean, depends on the person, sure, but I'm not Mary Sue over here, alright? She thinks it's Kai. Now, a little thing about me is that if anything, I love continuity, okay? If she was actually as observant as she's supposed to be, if she's actually as good at this like psychic thing as she was supposed to be, if she's actually as good, as she's supposed to be, I personally, and I think this would have made it more romantic, because romance is one thing that is not happening in this book. I know it's supposed to be romantasy. I'm not feeling the romance. I'm not feeling the love tonight, okay? I think, because she says, I can hear the heartbeat, like my head is against his chest, I can hear his heartbeat. I think she would have been able to hear this heartbeat that she's hearing, and she would have known if it was Kai or not. And I think it would have been sweet. I think it would have been romantic. I think you could have done something with, I want to say that it's him, but the beat of his heart does not match like the cadence that I've grown to know, or something like that. Like, this is not Kai as much as I want to believe that it is. He isn't here for me, stuff like that. She goes on to break this guy's wrist. This guy that she's holding, she goes on to break his wrist, okay, because she believes it's Kai. She breaks his wrist, and then her eyes adjust. And I had to write in all caps because I was so irritated at this point, because everything's just happening for plot convenience at this point. She breaks his wrist, puts a knife to his throat, and then her eyes happen to adjust to the darkness. Convenient. Am I wrong? She smiles at the guy she just broke. She smiles at the guy whose wrist she just broke, because he's like, can you get off of me now? You broke your wrist. And she smiles at him, which is lunatic behavior. Maybe she is going crazy. They all talk the same. Like, even this guy who is from a neighboring kingdom, country, city, territory, I don't know. There's nothing written to this book to help you understand what all these places are. Maybe there are, maybe I'm just like lost and confused, but there is nothing in this book to help differentiate what door is compared to what Ilya is. And they all talk the same. If you're from a different city, country, state, whatever door is, they should talk to this different. You assume that they should talk different. Gail from the kitchen back in Ilya, she talks different than the rest of them, because I think she's black-coded. And whether or not that is racism or not, I don't know. But the fact that none of these other people talk different is wild. It is a wild concept to me. She is so conscious. She is too conscious after being woken up from the brink of death. Okay, she is like cognizant. She is like not worried about being like, she does say like they have like such a little like fight scene kind of. She is talking about how she's like sluggish, but she's not like dehydrated to the point where it's like damaging, it's like it had no consequence. In the end of the day, her being dehydrated had no consequence whatsoever to her in this interaction, which is ridiculous. She said she puts her mouth to like the shell of his ear, which is gross and too personal when like personal space is a thing, but also like he probably smells, because while the palace might have running water, I don't know if the rest of the towns or cities or countries or continuities or whatever it is have running water, so he probably stinks a little bit. So I would not be getting that close regardless. But she's like asking if anyone else, like what other factions or whatever it is, knows like She's asking whether or not Dor, Tando, and Isram all know that she killed the king and if they're all looking for her. And the fact that they are is where the continuity starts to lose me a little bit, and I will talk about that. She ends up killing him because he tries to like choke her out because he wants the money. Apparently there's a price on her head, which is weird. Why would you put a price? This is where stuff starts to fall apart a little bit. Why would Kit put a price on her head if he wants Kai to bring her back to him alive? Because the stipulation for the prize money is alive or dead. If you don't want her dead, because he specifically said alive, if you don't want her dead, do not say alive or dead. You know, that's stupid. Anyway, we get to chapter 8. Chapter 8 is where I lost my freaking marbles, okay? Chapter 8 starts off with stabbed through the chest. Her signature move. This is Kai's POV. He's talking about Hayden. How her signature move can possibly be stabbing through people through the chest is beyond me. And how he knows she did it, absolutely no clue, okay? Because she doesn't leave the weapon. I don't believe she leaves the weapon. She stabbed 2 people through the chest at this point, including this guy. She stabbed one guy in the chest in loot, this guy in the chest, but then she sliced the king's throat, from what I've heard. How is her stabbing people through the chest her signature move? I figured her signature move would be slicing people's arteries, because that's what she did to the king. That's what my assumption would be. If you saw that this guy had, like, a slice through his neck, then I would be, hey, she was coming this way, and she's done this before, like this, like, neck slice and move. It might be her. I do believe that she killed this man. Except they're not doing that. He's like, oh yeah, she stabbed him through the chest, into the heart. Like, that's a her, obviously. This is obviously her. She's obviously the only one who can kill people. Obviously. Like, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. Kai is more observant than she is, and this is what she's supposed to be good at. It makes no sense. He says something about her leaving evidence behind. It's like, where is she going to drag this body? She's dehydrated and dying, and was crying over the fact that she killed this guy who was gonna like kill her. Let me tell you, if someone tried to kill me and I ended up killing them in response to them trying to kill me, I might be a little bit sad. I might be a little bit like, Jesus, forgive me, but I don't know if I'd cry over it. Like, you were trying to kill me. You were trying to snuff my light, so I snuff yours. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. I'm getting way too New York to talk about this. There's also been, like, no descriptive of what Dor looks like at all. So, like, where she was supposed to put him to hide the evidence, I have no idea. Was she supposed to bury him under the sand? Was she supposed to, like, dig a little pit and, like, plop him in there? Was she supposed to take him back to? And this is where it gets kind of weird, okay? This is where I'm losing it. The guard has been dead for a day. The guard that she killed has been dead for a day, okay? Dead for a day. And nobody else in this city, no other guards. He was from a tower. You're telling me that after 24 hours, which is what I'm assuming, can't make that assumption, but you're telling me that after this guard's shift ended and he didn't come back and report in or something like that, you're telling me he was the only one up in that tower that saw her out in the desert pass out? You're going to tell me that he was alone, and when they didn't hear from him, they weren't like, oh, hey, maybe we should go check up on Billy Bob. Maybe we should go check up on Billy Bob in Tower C and see what's happened to him. You're telling me that nobody went out looking for this man. No one, not a single soul, went out looking for this man, meaning that he was still there. Whether or not she hid the evidence, no one else came out and was like, oh, Billy Bob's dead. Billy Bob's been dead for a while. We should probably take him back to his family now. You're telling me that nobody did that. Everybody else is just so, like, oblivious enough to where they didn't go out and check their tower. They didn't check their post, and they didn't check that their guard was still there. If your guard does not check in from their check-in point at their time, you're going to assume that you're under attack. You're going to assume that something happened to him, and you're going to assume that someone's in to kill you, okay? That's just how it would go logically. Now, illogically is this. Illogically is Kai finding this man a day after Hayden killed him, right outside their city. They were right outside the city, by the way. He said, we don't have to travel very far. I'm thinking 20 steps. 20 steps past this tower or gate or whatever, because they don't describe what the outside of the city looks like. They don't describe whether or not she's come to a gate with 2 towers on either side. It's just a tower. He's come down from his tower to find her. He just says, it doesn't take us long. So I'm like, okay, 20 steps into the city. You're telling me that nobody saw her kill him 20 steps into the city? You're telling me that nobody looked out there once the sun had risen and was like, that's a body in the desert. I understand that people die in this desert. Why there weren't more bones in the desert, I don't understand. But you're telling me that nobody looked out and was like, there's a body in the desert. Maybe we should go check that out. Nobody in this world is curious? I don't get it. I don't understand. I think I had to stop halfway through chapter 8. I think I stopped. I think that's what this was, because I had to write in all capitals again, because I was absolutely losing it. They drag the body of this dead god. They drag him into the city and they drop him in front of another god. And they're not Imperials this time because they're in Dor. Whatever Dor is. They're in the city of Dor, or the county, the capital. They're in Dor. And they drop dead guard in front of another guard. And they're like, we think this belongs to you. And Kai's like, you tell me if you've seen the girl who I know who did this. And the guard looks at him, he's like, a woman did this? I'm like, you mean a woman has never killed a man before? Wow, you must live in peaceful times. But he's like, a woman did this? Her? She did this? You talking about that woman, the Silver Savior? How he knew? Because there were no context clues, okay? No context clues whatsoever, except for the fact that her face is plastered on posters all around every single city. Ilia, Dor, Tando, or whatever it is, and then Isram. Her face is all over the place, okay? Which is where the rest of the continuity starts to fall apart, but let me finish really quick. You're telling me that with no context clues, and him, because the people of Dor do not like Kai. They do not like Kai, they do not like the Imperials, and that's because the people of Dor are pretty much all powerless, if not all of them. They are all powerless, they do not like the elites, okay? They do not like the elites and their powers. You're telling me that, and this is where the continuity starts to fall, hold on to your horses. You're telling me that Kai comes into the city, and the guard looks at him and is like, oh yeah, I know exactly who you're here for. Yeah, that would make sense, kind of, if it was made public that the enforcer is being sent out to look for the king killer. Except it wasn't, okay? It is an open invitation to anyone and everyone to try and kill Hayden. So, how they knew that he was the enforcer, because I don't know if anybody else knows. Outside of Ilia, I don't know if it's never been explained that anyone knows that Kai is actually the enforcer now. How he was like, oh, you mean that Payton killed this man? You want to know that if Payton killed this man? Like, Kai didn't even say that. Kai said nothing. He's like, I think I know who did this. You tell me if you've seen her. He didn't say, oh yeah, she has silver hair. Oh yeah, she's the king killer. He was just like, tell me if you've seen whoever killed this man. And bro just put 2 and 2 together and was like, oh, the Silver Savior did this? Yeah, I'll tell you if I saw her. How did he know? How? Explain to me how. How did he know? Because if some random guy that I've never seen before comes up to me and drops a dead body in front of my feet and he's like, I think I know who did this, tell me if you've seen them. I'm like, who are you talking about? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? I'd be so confused. I'd be so lost and confused, okay? Anyway, this is where the continuity falls apart, okay? The only people with powers, the only elites, are the people who live in Ilia. The people of Dor, the people of Tanda, the people of Isram, they're all powerless, okay? They're all ordinaries. All the ordinaries from Ilia ran to Dor across the desert. They ran to Dor once the genocide started, okay? So you're telling me that all these ordinary people who have been discriminated and killed their entire lives, they're going to sit here, they're going to look at this girl, who is essentially their Katniss Everdeen, okay? They're going to look at her, and they're going to be like, yeah, she killed the king. She killed the king who was trying to kill us, you know? She killed the king who started the genocide. Let's kill her. You're telling me that is a logical, like, that's something that they would do? They wouldn't think, oh, she killed the king, yeah. You don't think that they wouldn't turn her into a Katniss Everdeen? You don't think that they wouldn't turn her into a figurehead of their rebellion? You don't think that there were more rebellion people out in Dor and Isram and Tonda? You don't think that that's a thing? Like, how everyone, every single person, how everyone in the kingdom is out to kill her? I don't understand, because that would never be that would never be possible. So unless I'm wrong, unless there is a section of the rebellion in Dor where who she meets and who she gathers with, because granted, I'm only up through I haven't even finished chapter 8, but you're telling me that every single person in this country, kingdom, book, city, continent, you're telling me that everybody wants to kill her, and none of them are like, oh yeah, the king is dead, no more genocide, rise up. No one wants to do that. And another thing, Ilya secluded themselves. They closed themselves off to all of the other countries, kingdoms, provinces, all the other places around them. It was only Ilya for a while, because they were hoarding all of the power. You're going to tell me that Dor, then all these other places, Dor and Isram, all these places were okay with Ilya just like opening the floodgates and coming in and like invading? Like they're just going to be okay with that? They're just going to sit by and be like, oh yeah, this is fine. I'm sure this is fine. As long as you're not bothering us, like this is fine. Like, are the people from, because I'm making the assumption that all of these cities are under one kingdom. Okay? I'm making the assumption that all of these cities are in one kingdom. So do the people from Dor and like Tondo, do they all also, because they're only across a desert, okay? They're unlike Isram, which is across a sea. They're only across the desert. Do they get chosen to participate in the trials as well, or do they not? Are they free of it all? Do they even know what the trials are? I'm so lost. I'm so lost and confused. And let me tell you what probably would have made this book better, is if we cut Kai. Now hear me out. Hear me out. I know this is supposed to be a romance. I know that the point of this series is not to be a dystopian fantasy sci-fi adventure, whatever. It's not supposed to be a coming of age. It is simply supposed to be a romance. It is a romance wrapped up in the bow of fantasy. Okay? I understand that. All right? Cognitively, I get that now. But what could have made this good is if you did kind of like the Mockingjay. Like if you turn this book into kind of what the Mockingjay was, where the rebellion, which is all of these surrounding cities, okay, all these surrounding cities are part of the rebellion. Like, and Ilya didn't know, because Ilya secluded themselves. So when she gets to Dor, even though her posters are like up and stuff, they're all like, oh hey, that's our silver savior, that's our girl. And they take her in and they fix her up and they start teaching her how to lead the rebellion like her father did. And you can bring Kai back sometimes, but I think this book should have focused mainly on Peyton and her growth and how she's dealing with being the murderer of the king. She's now accepting her father's death, that it wasn't the king that did it, it was the guy that she somehow fell in love with who did it. She's having to battle with all these emotions, and we're getting a different cast of characters that isn't just Kit, Kai, and Peyton. You know what I mean? And so during that, you can have Kai come in, but you could say, like, I don't know, like the Imperials that are with Kai. Some of them, like Lenny, some of them are in the resistance, in the rebellion or whatever. And so they warn her. They warn the rebellion every single time Kai is getting close or he's on the trail. They come in and they warn her, and they're like, he's coming, like, we gotta move. And it's like him chasing her and getting really close every single time, but somehow he just misses her every single time. And then sometimes she could be watching from a distance and she could be like observing him, and you could do like this sort of like captivating like cat and mouse kind of thing, except he thinks he's the cat, but in all reality, like, she's the cat and she's like watching him. And so he's lost her by this point. You could go to Dor and Tondo and then Isram and come back around. Like, at this point, he's lost her and he has to go back to Kit, and he's like, I have no idea. Like, she just, like, vanished. Like, every time I thought it was getting close, she'd just be gone. And she, at that point, has been following him and has been tailing him. And she could come in and you could do some sort of, like, big, like, standoff at the end, and then the rebellion could come up and you could just, like, blow up the entire palace or something like that. Like, something like that, you know? Like, maybe don't kill people. Like, you can have the rebellion people, like, flush everybody out first, and then she's facing off with the brothers, and then everything just, like, explodes around them, and that's where you end the book, and you could pick up book 3 or something or other. Like, there are so many better ways, I think, that you could do this, and you could turn it more into like an actual like enemies to lovers, because at this point they still like each other. It has been said more than once that they still like each other even though they shouldn't. Like, if I learned that the guy that I liked or loved or whatever their relationship was killed my dad, I'd be like, you might want to pretend you never said that, because it's full force right now. I may be a good little Christian girl, but I'm coming for ya, okay? Like, they're like, I love him, and I wish he was, I wish we were still a thing, even though I know I shouldn't. I can't love him. He killed my. I'm like, what? You're battling with this? This is something that you're battling internally about. You're actually having like a struggle. You're struggling with this. Like, I could never. It could never be me. Never. Would never catch me. Never. So, up to this point, chapter 8, 45-minute video, it's not been a bad time. Much better, I think. No, can't say that either, because the first one was also not spectacular. But at least in this one, I know this book is not going to be a Pulitzer Prize, Nobel Prize. It's not going to be as good as I expected the first one to be, okay? When I picked up the first book, while my expectations weren't high, they were higher than Book Talk, okay? All of my expectations for books on Book Talk are down here. And this book was at least up here, okay? So, like, I had some expectations, and now that my expectations are shattered and I have no plans on necessarily not enjoying, but like it's hard to say these things without being completely and utterly ruthless with it. But now that I know that this is not a book that I'm absolutely going to fawn over, it's fine. It's a fine read. Now that I know the quality of which I am consuming, I'm not as disappointed. And I think that's what made the first book so bad for me, was because I was disappointed. I was disappointed with the execution, with the prose, with the stuff like that. But even in this book, and this book was completely and fully edited and worked over by Simon and Schuster Teen, there are editing mistakes in this book still. Like, they have missed full-on, like, quotation marks. Like, there are severe editing mistakes in this trad published book, which is surprising to me. I will continue to read, I guess, and then I'll update you guys again once I get through a relatively large portion. I will see you guys in my next update. Okay, bestie, we need to talk about this. I finished chapter 8. I'm up through I finished chapter 15. I'm up to chapter 16. I cannot read chapter 16 without telling you what I've been going through emotionally, okay? So, I hadn't even gotten halfway through chapter 8, alright, the last time I talked to you. So, I'm gonna finish that really quick. The ending of chapter 8 was, well, I can't even tell you, like, how chapter 8 concluded, because I just don't understand. Okay, I'm gonna try to explain to you as quickly and concisely as possible how this happened and why I don't understand. The king was killed 3 days ago, by the beginning of this book, okay? 3 days ago, the king was killed. It takes 5 days to get to Dor, alright? They have posters in Dor with Payton's face on them, saying, dead or alive, The king wants Peyton and Ilya for 20,000 silvers or shillings or shekels or whatever their money is, okay? We are told time and time again that the posters that they have of Peyton's face are worn and ratty and sun-bleached and, like, falling apart. They're, like, old posters. How? By the time Peyton gets to Door, it's been 8 days. Did they have these posters on, like, the back burner? Do they have an elite with, like, future telling powers who was like, hey, guess what? You're gonna die to this girl. You might want to put these posters out. But even then, that doesn't explain how the posters can be days old and be falling apart and worn from weather and stuff like that. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, the continuity just doesn't make any sense. Is there a quicker way to Door? And why didn't Peyton take that quicker way to Door? Because she practically almost died trying to get to Door in the first place. I can't explain it because there's probably not an explanation. That's just how this is going. Why they would put on the posters wanted dead or alive, especially when Kit specifically asked for her to be returned alive. I don't get it. One of the other things that I didn't understand was, how is Kai well known? Because he says that they're well known in Door. Like he walked in and everybody obviously knows who he is because he's the enforcer. I'm gonna jump back a little bit. The guard is asking, because Kai wants to know if Peyton is in Door, and so he asks this guard, have you seen her? And the guard is like, why would I tell you? That way you can go ahead and steal my 20,000 silver, shilling, whatever it is. And Kai's like, dude, I'm the one with the 20,000 to be given out as a prize. How? First of all, you can't just say that with no context, because if it is in order from the king that Peyton is to be taken to Ilya, dead or alive, for $20,000, and then you come in here saying, I'm the one giving out the $20,000, people are just going to assume that you are the king. And no one has called him the enforcer. But even then, like, how would they know? Because he says later, we're so well known, like, the royalty of Ilya is, like, spoken as, like, a fairy tale, we're idolized, like, stuff like that. And it's like, how? Like, it's previously been said that Ilya has completely isolated themselves from the rest of the kingdom, okay? How are you idolized? How are people talking about you? How do people actually even know what you look like? Because there's been nothing, at least from my memory, that shows what everyone looks like, especially because the surrounding cities have nothing to do with the trials. So it's not like they'll be watching the trials and they'll see, like, the king and the queen, and it's not like they watched Kai compete. Like, they have nothing to do with it, and they want nothing to do with Ilya, because it's said that the people in Door hate the elites, so they obviously want nothing to do with Ilya. Ilya obviously didn't want anything to do with them, which is why the continuity of this country, kingdom, city-state is so weird, because are they or are they not one kingdom? And if all of these people, or all of these places, like Door and Tando and Isram and Ilya, if they are one kingdom, why were all the elites centralized in Ilya? Why is Ilya the only place where you can find elites, and why were the other cities, I think, completely, like, ostracized for the most part? Like, you would essentially just, like, separate yourself, right? At some point, because your kingdom wants nothing to do with you, and you just be like, hey, we're gonna create our own way of, like, our own cultures, we're gonna come up with, like, our own money system, because no money is coming out from Ilya, and we're not sending any, like, trade in, so we have to trade amongst ourselves. Like, Door and Tando have to trade, and Tando might cross the forest or something like that to go trade with Isram, but, like, no one can cross the shallow seas, so maybe these places are just their own little centralized, like, governments, and they aren't trading amongst, which also doesn't make sense. So, I'm lost and confused about pretty much everything. He's complaining about being hungry or like thirsty or something like that. And it's like, dude, you had food the entire trip. Because he's complaining the exact same way that Peyton was complaining a chapter earlier about her being so thirsty and so hungry. Like, they are written the exact same. It's no wonder that these characters like each other, even though they're both so insufferable. It's because they are the exact same person. Okay, they are exactly the same. Like, no matter what, like down to like the self-deprecation and like the self-loathing and like everything between them is the same. Like, both of their fathers are dead. They allegedly killed each other's fathers, and I say allegedly because by the time chapter 15 ended, he was like, "What do you mean I killed your dad? How long ago was that?" Which led into a miscommunication trope, which, when done well, miscommunication tropes are fine. But miscommunication tropes done by an author with little to no imagination are just, you've lost me. Completely. And utterly, you've lost me. This is the first time in chapter 8 where the elite weakening disease is actually like brought up as a thing that they're worried about. And it's like, if the ordinaries are so deadly, why aren't Kai and these Imperials coming into door completely dressed head to toe in some sort of like hazmat gear? Why aren't they more scared? Why aren't they wearing like face coverings? Why aren't they like prepared to camp outside of the city in the desert? Like, why? And it was only brought up once in the end of chapter 8. It's only been brought up once thus far. Okay, how it's not been brought up again? How Kai is still like obsessed with Peyton even though she's powerless and ordinary, how he's still like, oh my gosh, I am obsessed with her, my thoughts are all about her. Like, dude, if she is carrying this elite weakening disease that you're so concerned about, why aren't you like, like, brother, like, we can be doing more. I found myself skipping absolute paragraphs, absolute chunks and pages of this like lead up because it was so repetitive. They would say the same thing 3 different times and call it like a paragraph. Like, that's not how you write stuff. That's not how that works. I would not have a problem with this book if there was more dialogue. Okay? Your stories, what makes them compelling and what makes people think about them, typically must be character driven. Okay? Any stage play you see, any like Broadway show, typically is always character driven because the only way that you can get like points across is through dialogue. Like, unless you have some sort of like fairy tale, like Snow White or something, where you have a narrator who can expo dump a whole bunch of background to you in the beginning of the show, you aren't going to sit there and you aren't going to expo dump a whole bunch of stuff during your stage play. Your exposition, your backstory is going to come from the characters themselves. That's why movies and TV shows and stuff are very dialogue driven. Like, that is the only way to get your information across. And this book has no dialogue. Like, none. Like, there's a chapter coming up which is like from Kit's perspective. It's about a page and a half in 8.5 by 11 format terms. It's about a page and a half. Not a single ounce of dialogue. It's just all like self-reflection, kind of. It is the same self-reflection that we got chapters prior when Kit sent Kai out to find Peyton to begin with. He's just thinking the same things internally that he said or thought or felt previously when talking to Kai in like chapter 5? Oh, brother. I had to split this section in half because I ended up, my mic ended up dying. So we're back. Chapter 9. She somehow knows this merchant's name, who she is, like, buying bread from. Apparently his name was carved into the table stand. And my question is how does she know that it's his name, and how does she know that he didn't just buy the table secondhand? You know, I was waiting for him to be like, you know, my name isn't Francis. and why the character's name is Frances to begin with is wild to me, but I digress. The narrative for this is like Dor is really like poor. You know, this city of Dor is like poor and ragged and stuff, and it's like, well, then how do you know that the table wasn't bought secondhand? You know, this book keeps trying to make Peyton really smart and really like observant, but she's really not. Like, that isn't coming across at all. Like, Kai is more observant, obviously observant, than Peyton is, which is not something you want if your main character is supposed to be, you know, the smart one. It's been 2 days since she got to Dor by at chapter 9. It's been 2 days and she's good. Like, Peyton is completely good. She's totally fine, I guess, which is weird considering like how bad she was. Like, how did she get water? Where did she get water from? Like, did she eat? How did she get food? Did she steal it? Because currently she's buying food from this guy named Francis, where typically she would steal it if she was in loot. And it's like, why isn't she going back to her roots? Why isn't she going back to like her thieving? Never explained. It kind of gets brought up kind of once where she's like, in loot I would have stolen from this man, but I guess she's trying to like have a fresh start, and so she's willing to not steal from these people. I don't know. I don't get what the thought process is, because if you're trying to have a fresh start, leave the country, leave the kingdom, leave the continent, even. Like, try your luck in the sea, like crossing the sea, get to Isram, and then flee from there. Like, this idea that a city that is 5 days away from the capital of your country is far enough is wild to me, because it's not. In the end, it's not far enough for you to have a fresh start, especially when your face is plastered all over the walls of this city. Peyton says Francis's name way too much. Every single time she speaks to him, she says his name. That would be like me speaking to you, and every time I spoke to you, I said viewer, or like Twitch streamer saying chat every single time they talk to chat, as if it's not obvious who I'm talking to. It's kind of surprising. Like, 5 days from Ilia is Dor, and in that span, the entire ecosystem of the world changes. Walking, by the way, this is walking. If I walked 5 days in the United States, I could probably get to Tennessee. Editing Becca here. It could actually take me 5 days to get to Ohio, not Tennessee. That would take me 10. I could probably get to Tennessee. I haven't checked how long it would take me to walk. So yeah, I guess the ecosystem kind of changes, but to have the literal Sahara Desert opposed to like this really cliff, like the mountain, which is like all ice caps, and then the forest, like just the demographics of this world don't make sense at all. But then the fact that Ilia is like in the center and has regular seasons, and then Dor does not, like, nothing about this makes sense, which is why I keep asking the questions. Was this kingdom man-made? Was this kingdom artificially made? Did the people with elemental powers create the sea, the forest, the desert, and the mountain to go around the kingdom? Did they do it on purpose? Because otherwise this just makes no sense. Otherwise this kingdom is simply just another plot device for the first book, and that means that this book, Reckless, was not supposed to exist. Frances, this person of color, okay? Because it is made clear to us that all of the people in Dor are people of color, okay? It is blatantly said to us that the people of Dor are people of color. And that, I don't know why, to me, it feels like it's bordering on something. I don't want to throw out like the racist card, you know. I don't want to throw that out here. But Francis calls Peyton a pale thing. Like, he just calls her pale thing multiple times, by the way. And that, to me, when I read it, was kind of giving like what makes the red man red from Peter Pan, or Savages from Pocahontas, like, is kind of giving racially thoughtlessness when it comes to like race. The entire city of Dor, mind you, feels like Alibaba. Hey all, Editing Becca here again, just to say that the city in Aladdin is not called Alibaba, it is actually called Agrabah, and I don't know why I called it Alibaba, except for maybe the fact that a city in my book is called Alilaba, and I was kind of transposing the thoughts, but there is no excuse for it. I do have to apologize. It is Agrabah, not Alibaba. Alibaba was the man, not the place, so I apologize. From Aladdin. Like, that's what this entire place feels like. And I get, this place is fictional. This is a fictional place, and any groups of people that resemble others are obviously coincidental. But everything we write as people is drawn from our own experiences and our own, like, knowledge of stuff. A book like this, a book that reads more sci-fi than fantasy, okay? Because in the end, this feels more sci-fi than fantasy because you have not given me any fantasy. You have not given me any mythical creatures. You have not given me any mythos. You have not done any world building to really develop that this is actually a fantasy versus this is just people with supernatural powers, which is giving sci-fi. And the fact that the world that you're building has people and places that resemble real life people and places, real life people groups. These are ordinary people. These people don't have powers. They live in poverty, apparently, from what the book says. They are people of color. They don't have anything special about them, which means that they are like us. And that's what was said in Powerless, is that everyone in this world was ordinary until they were powerful, until they had powers. And it's like, well, then what differentiates this world from our world? Like, at the end of the day, what makes the kingdom of Ilya any different from our world? Because there is no fantasy in this story at all. This isn't even, you can't even call this a romantasy because there is no fantasy. This is simply a romance. At the end of the day, even the first book, there was no fantasy. It was written to be like the Hunger Games. It was written to be like Red Queen. And neither of those books really were fantasy. What I'm trying to say is that these people in Dor are very Arabic coded. Everything about the city of Dor is very Arabic coded. I don't know if we were bordering on racism or racist stereotypes, but then again, I'm white. I can't really talk about racism on the inverse because I have never experienced racism. I've never experienced being targeted in one aspect or another because of the color of my skin. That's never happened to me. So I can't say either way what was or was not done properly in this book. But to me, while reading it, it felt done improperly. Peyton, as she's walking away, she's stolen bread from Francis anyway. She bought one loaf and then stole 2 more, so she now has 3, in case you are bad at math. She shoves them into the pockets of her vest. The vest in question is the same vest that Adina gave her in book 1. I still want to know how big the pockets of this vest were, because if you don't remember from the first video that I did about the Powerless, apparently there was honey pooling in the pockets of her vest. Well, how much honey was in these buns? I would like to know if we ever washed the vest. I want to know if there's still honey crusted in this vest from the first chapter of Powerless. There's talk about the elites and the powerful having colored hair. And she says that there's something about the colored hair that makes it sound like even if you don't have powers, you can have colored hair, which is why Peyton has colored hair. Peyton is powerless. Who would have thunk she has colored hair? And there's like some other reason to her having colored hair. In this book, it sort of just retcons everything that we were told in the first book about how these people have colored hair. I wonder if I can find it for you. Here's the line that retcons pretty much everything that the first book told us about having colored hair. Any sort of oddly colored hair is a dead giveaway that you have plagued blood running through your veins, whether you are ordinary or elite. That sentence alone retcons everything that we had been told in Powerless. In Powerless, we were specifically told only people with powers can have this mutation of colored hair. That's why all these ordinaries were struggling to like blend in. That's how it was so obvious that the people were ordinary. But then again, that also doesn't explain at all how people knew that their neighbors were ordinary. Somehow, if we remember Abigail from the first book, I don't think I actually told you her name in that video that I made because I didn't remember it because it wasn't important. Abigail comes back in Reckless, okay? Abigail comes back in this book. Abigail was the girl that Kai spared when he was sent out to kill her because she was ordinary, and her family was banished to the desert. And somehow all of these people made it to Dor, okay? All Abigail and her family made it to Dor. I don't know if we're ever going to see Abigail's family, but we at least see Abigail. My thing about the people of Dor, we're going to go on a couple side tangents, but I'm going to come back around. My thing about the people of Dor is that apparently they don't like elites at all. They don't like elites at all. But if it is a normal circumstance to banish the elites harboring the ordinary, wouldn't you think that all of the elites are going to go to Dor, or are they all going to walk down to Tando, or whatever it is? I want to know, why did Abigail's parents decide to go to Dor if it is completely known and common that the people of Dor do not like the elites? But then Kai talks as if the people of Dor know when an elite enters the city. But then again, he was also trekking in a bunch of Imperials, so maybe it was just known right off the bat that he was elite and they were elite, and that's why they didn't welcome them with banners and confetti cannons. The other thing is, how do everyday people know when someone is ordinary versus when they're elite? Because the elites can have colored hair, but they also have normal hair. Kit and Kai and pretty much every other male character in this book has regular, schmegular, everyday colored hair. And only the women seem to have obnoxiously colored hair. Okay, that seems to be like the key point. I don't know if that's because of internal like misogyny, to be like, oh, dudes don't color their hair, dudes don't paint their nails, dudes don't do anything remotely like feminine, like emote, like dudes don't have emotion. And I don't know if that's kind of the thought process behind having every single man not have colored hair versus every single woman that we meet either have colored hair or not. Because I can give you a list. Andy has colored hair, Belair has colored hair, Peyton has colored hair. I think one of the rebellion women had colored hair. Granted, some of them don't. And those were all people of color. Like, Adina didn't have colored hair, Sadie didn't have colored hair. So it's like only the women had colored hair. There might have been one guy with colored hair, and that was the boy that Peyton ran into for the rebellion. The one, he might have had really like dark blue hair, like sapphire hair. That might have been brought up, or I'm making it up. But someone at some point I thought had blue hair, and I'm not sure. But that being set aside, if everyone else in this world has regular colored hair, how do you know you're looking at an ordinary person versus an elite person? Is there a way to test it? Is there a way to know for sure? Because they act as if they act like the only way to know if someone has powers is to either send out silencers or to have Kai go through and check every single person. But somehow they figured out that Abigail was powerless, and she and her family were sent out to the desert. How did they know? How did they figure it out? That it's not like they're going around randomly and testing people, or maybe they are. In the first book, I know a Imperial stopped Hayden and asked her about her powers, and he was like, I have the right to stop anyone and check them about their powers. And that's fine, I guess, but that also doesn't make sense because are all Imperials stopping the same person every single time to ask them to demonstrate what their powers are? Because then you also have the mundanes, and the mundanes aren't brought up pretty much at all. Like, I don't know what the mundanes are. I don't know what they do. I don't know what their point is. Because you have the elites have pretty much all powers, and then mundanes have what? Weaker powers? I think the mundanes. What do you want? I think it's brought up in book 1 that the mundanes have like force field powers because the homeless people that were living on the streets of Loot, I'm gonna say with Payton, had powers not as strong as the elites, but the elites tend to have like every power, and the mundanes have force fields, the ability to wield fire. I mean, your new king, Kit, can wield fire. He can also wield water. He's the only dual wielder we know of in this continuity at all. There's nobody else. Is there a reason? And he never uses his powers, either of them. He never uses either of them. How is he the only one with dual powers? How is Kai one of the only people with the, I don't know what he calls it, like the mirror, like the replication where he can see an elite or feel their power and then like can use their power? Like, how is he the only one of those? I don't get it. We never meet another psychic, we never meet another psychic to see what their powers are actually like. Like, Payton is the only one who is psychic, and she's not even a real psychic, and she's not even very good at it. So I don't understand how these people. Did one of the Imperials stop Abigail and her family and were like, what are all your powers? And at that point, when they do they write them down? Do they take names and write them down and be like, okay, okay, okay? I feel like when the king went on this huge, like, genocidal rampage that he did, because that's what was said, is that everyone with ordinary blood was, like, killed or outcast. It was, like, a huge exodus. I'm assuming, I don't remember exactly what happened in the last book, because nothing did and there was no world building. But I feel like when the king went on his rampage of killing ordinaries, you would have a way, yes, to decipher A, who is an ordinary and who is not, and B, that would all be written down somewhere in some sort of ledger. And people who were born ordinary after that happened would be the people that you have to, like, weed out or whatever. But there should be a way to keep track of that. I don't understand how anyone went through this and didn't stop and think about it a little more. I also don't get why we never talked about the fact that it is a literal genocide. I don't know why we never, the gears, the cogs never turned that far. After that, side rant, but then she brought up the fact that she needs money. Why does she need money? She's a thief. All of the cities in Ilia, the kingdom, or whatever it's called, use the same currency, which doesn't make sense, because if Ilia, the city, I don't know, it doesn't make sense. It's Ilia the city, the capital. Does Loot reside in Ilia the city, or is Ilia the entire kingdom? If Ilia is the city, then what is the kingdom called? Should I just call it Ilia and the kingdom, and Dor and Tando and Ilia and Isram, apparently, are all within the kingdom? But they all use the same currency, even though Ilia, the city, secluded themselves and cut off everyone else all this time ago, they use the same that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. At some point when Ilya was not opening their borders and you could not send trade in and get profit out, you would start creating your own form of currency to barter with, or all of these cities would just divulge to the bartering system because there was literally no other way for them to make money and survive. Because if your main source of income, assumedly, is Ilya, and there's no money coming out of Ilya because no import can go into Ilya, then you need to come up with another way. It's called supply and demand, and that's basic economics. Basic economics, okay? She's curious about one thing, okay? She sees two dudes in an alley, and they're using the slang of mate, and yer, and bastard. It feels very Australian. And apparently they run an illegal fighting ring, okay? She's not recovered, like, at all. I don't know why she even thought in her little teeny tiny pea brain, like, not even two brain cells are rubbing together at this point. It is one brain cell booping around inside of her skull because she is not smart. She's not smart. She follows the guys into this illegal underground fighting ring. Alliteration, fists finding flesh. Awful. Take it back. I don't want it. Why does the fighting ring have to be illegal? She walks up to a guy behind a table and automatically just knows that he's in charge, and I'm like, but you don't. How do you do that? Usually the guy in charge of the ring, at least from movies that I've seen, the guys who are running, like actually running the illegal fighting ring, are never on the floor because they never want to get caught if someone does end up breaking down the door, okay? So how you assumed that this guy behind the table taking the money is the guy who runs the place, I have no idea how you got the conclusion, but I love your confidence, okay? She was right, but whatever. I knew exactly where this scene was going the moment she stepped into the ring, okay? She steps up to the guy behind the table and she's like, I want to fight. And he's like, you don't just get to come up here and say that you want to fight. And she threatens to tell the guards, because they're like, the way that there are Imperials in Ilya, there are guards here in Dor, apparently. I guess they're supposed to be like the police, except they're completely useless in Dor, I guess. And it's like, of course they would be. They're a part of this entire thing. Whatever. She threatens to tell the guards about the illegal fighting ring, and he's like, you got spirit. I'm gonna let you fight. No, I don't think you understand. Like, he would have your head. Okay, if you tried to do that in, like, I don't know, say that there was a New York fighting ring and you threatened to throw the entire operation under the bus because you didn't get your way, you would be dead. You would actually be dead. So there is literally no combatants to Payton whatsoever. Everything is just a plot device to move her and Kai forwards and towards each other. It is so stupid. And the name she chooses, because he's like, what name do you want to be put down when you are in the ring? She says Shadow. That is so dumb. That is so incredibly dumb. I absolutely want to gouge my eyes out. But no, it's like, how do you go into a fighting ring and how do you threaten to dispose of the entire operation? And how are they like, yeah, okay, you are definitely not a red flag at all. Sure, we'll let you fight. I don't get it. That doesn't make any sense to me. I do believe chapter 10 is also from Payton's POV. Chapter 10, not much really happens, and my notes aren't very helpful, actually, believe it or not. So I can't even tell you what happens in chapter 10 because I simply don't know and don't remember. Oh, no, wait. I remember what happened. Chapter 10 is actually Kai's POV, believe it or not. And this is when Kai runs into Abigail again. Remember aforementioned Abigail? She just somehow remembers Kai. Just somehow. But apparently Abigail is also older now. It's been a month. And she's older. I don't know. It's weird. It's strange and peculiar. But Abigail is going to the fighting ring, and she just brings Kyle along because she just somehow trusts him now. And that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm back, and I have more chicken nuggets. Abigail takes him to the illegal fighting ring. Why you would do that after this man sentenced you and your family to death, essentially? Like, he sent them across the desert, no food, no water. Unless they grabbed food or water from, like, a friend, unless they had friends who were like, hey, we saw what happened, here's your stuff. These people were essentially, like, dead. He killed these people, and Abigail's just okay with that. She's like, yeah, that's fine, I guess. That's okay. 11 is Peyton again. She's fighting in the ring. Blood is okay in this context. When she is, like, fighting someone for money, blood is okay. Any other time, it's not. Is there a bubble in my ranch? And she keeps talking about her hair. Shave it off. Just gonna be real frank with you right now. Shave your head, okay? If you can't control it, cut it off. Then I had a question for this chapter. Is Peyton, is she or is she not 18? Because in this book, there is a quote that says, a girl of nearly 18 beating a grown man, or I'm paraphrasing, okay? But it's like, a girl of nearly 18 beating a man in a ring twice her size or something. I'm like, I thought she was 18. I thought she was 18 and he was 19, or she was 19 and he was 20. Like, they were legal, okay, is what I'm trying to say, and now she isn't 18 anymore, unless these people, like, age backwards. She's fighting this guy, and she's trying to figure out, like, his fighting style, like, in the ring, and I'm just sat here, like, it's been a couple days by this point. It's been quite a few days. She hasn't come in to watch him fight, like, at all, to work her, like, not at all. Like, this girl is supposed to be smart, and she's not, like, putting in the work to like, help herself out in this context. Peyton and Kai couldn't stay away from each other even for 10 chapters, okay? The end of chapter 11, Kai and Peyton are reunited again, okay, at the end of chapter 11. Chapter 12 is a chapter from Kit's POV, believe it or not, but Kit is literally just repeating to himself what he and Kai kind of spoke about in their previous chapter, like chapter 5, something like that. Like, it is the same stuff that we have already heard again, but just from Kit's POV. At this point, it's been 2 weeks for Kit's POV, and he has not done any self-care at all, and that's gross. This man is grieving, he is obviously in a depression, and he needs friends. Where is Andy? Where is Gale, honestly, at this point? If Gale is so interconnected with the princes, not even just Kai, but like Kit as well. If Gale is so important to them, why isn't she coming up and like trying to help? Why is no one helping this man? Chapter 13. This entire book would have been more exciting if they just stayed apart longer. I get that it's a romantasy, but forget the fantasy. I get that this is a romance, but it's not even very romantic. Like, this is written in the most dry way. I don't understand how people actually like this A, Kai, or B, Peyton. Like, I don't get how people like these main characters at all, because they're all just so stupid. Kai was thinking about like Peyton's body and stuff when looking at, because chapter 13 picks up immediately where chapter 11 took off, except from Kai's POV. So he's looking at Shadow, and he's being really like kind of really objectifying about it, and he's like, I know the curves of her body even underneath the layers of her clothes, because Peyton is pretending to be a dude. She's pretending to be a man in this context. Her head's like, she's completely like covered except for her eyes, and she's pretending to be a dude, I guess. And he's like, I know the curve of her body anywhere, even though it's like under her clothes. And it's like, brother, imagine if that actually wasn't Peyton and you were just being like completely objectifying to a random stranger. Like, that's kind of silly goofy of you. Kai is being an absolute a-hole, and I said so right there. And they talk about Ocean Eyes again, and it's like, Billy, come get your check. They said the same thing in 3 ways. I don't know, it's getting ridiculous at this point about how little can actually be said in this book. Kai names himself Flame to combat her shadow, And I just kind of sat there and I was like, is this Rebecca Yarros? Are we getting less and less creative with stuff? Because, like, I haven't read Fourth Wing, and I never plan on even attempting to read Fourth Wing because I live vicariously through other people who have read Fourth Wing. It's like, if he has shadow powers, she has lightning powers, she has shadow, he has flame. Like, can we do something else? Can we do anything else? He is death and she is life. Or she is grass and he is dirt. Anything more creative. There's a chase scene. He's like, I know she's going to disappear by the way she's looking around and backing away and melting into the crowd just like a shadow. I'm like, brother, you are better at being a psychic than she is. Maybe she does have the psychic powers and you are just better at using them. It's like, there ain't no way that nobody else, like, saw her, like, backing up and was like, oh yeah, she's gonna book it. Like, I don't get it. They're running, they're chasing each other. She stops running at some point to put a knife to his throat. We have another knife to the throat scene, and he's like, kill me. And I'm like, you should have. You should have at least harmed him severely. Like, multiple stab wounds, at least. If you couldn't bring yourself to kill him, at least make sure he cannot walk anymore. At least. They kiss for the first time. They didn't kiss last book, I guess. They kiss this time, and it's so unsexy. And she bites him and then forces him away, and he just thinks, oh yeah, that was hot, she bit me. I don't think we get a POV from her opinion of the kiss, but honestly, I think that he technically just assaulted her. I think she bit him to try to get him to stop and then pushed him away and was like, don't ever do that again. And he was like, oh yeah, she wanted it just as much as I did. And I'm like, that is assailant behavior. That is assault. I don't get how people are liking this. This was my face while reading the kiss. I would do it for you, but I don't want to look that ugly on camera. He's taking credit for teaching her how to punch, but then, like, just previously in this chapter, he was like, her skills have been honed for years. And I'm like, did you or did you not teach her how to punch? And have her skills, have they or have they not been honed for years? They always end up fighting, like fist fighting each other in this relationship, and that's supposed to be considered healthy? Is that considered a good thing? I don't think that's a good thing. He threatens to take off her headscarf and out her and expose her. I'm like, this could have been a metaphor. This could have been an allegory. But we're not that smart. Chapter 14, Peyton says that he has silver eyes. I thought they were gray. I think there's a difference in those colors, but whatever. This is so gross, no redemption. That is a quote from my notes. There was a chapter break. There didn't need to be. They just swapped POVs mid-fight, okay? And they're doing the same thing. She should have killed him. Manipulation. And then he's manipulating her at this point. And they're manipulating each other. This is not healthy. They should not. There's no redemption. He calls her mine. She is mine. And I'm glad that she acknowledges how weirdly possessive that is. But that doesn't mean that anything's going to come from it. Because obviously she's going to let it go. And she's not going to be like, huh, yeah, that's kind of strange. And I don't know if that's healthy. Apparently he's so freaking tall now. Apparently he's way taller than he was in the last book. Strange and peculiar. There's a bunch of repetition. I'm just reading my notes to you right now because I don't remember what happened. Like, I knew that at least in the last book Lauren was decent at writing fights. This fight was not decent. I didn't like it. There was literally nothing. Like, there were too many hands and too many feet, and I didn't know what was hitting what when. Like, none of it made sense. Miscommunication plot is thrown in here, and it's poorly done. And I am so upset because she keeps bringing up, you killed my father. And he's like, I killed your father? No, wait, I didn't. And she won't let him finish his freaking sentence. And so there's going to be a miscommunication trope, which I hate. I hate in that. And then we got to chapter 16, which I didn't finish. So I had to return this book tomorrow. I got up through 15 chapters. If anyone wants me to actually finish this book, y'all are gonna have to put in some work and tell me, because I don't really want to suffer through the rest of this book without a payout. Okay, I know there's like no pain, no gain. This is all pain for probably no gain at this point. Like, y'all are gonna have to let me know, because I am glad that I spent no money on this book. I love supporting artists and their craft, but artists have to be good at their craft. I'm not gonna go into like an art show and look at a vendor with coloring pages colored in for $15 a piece, not even in a frame at that, and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy that over someone who did the work themselves. Okay, that's the comparison that I'm making. Colored in coloring page that was probably printed off of the internet, or someone who actually put in the work themselves. There is one who I'm going to support with my money, and the other who I'm going to not do that for. I said in my previous videos of Powerless that I thought this book was going to be better because she had an actual editing team behind her. I don't know how much work that editing team actually did, because there are a lot of errors in this book. A lot of errors that should have been edited if someone actually read this book. Now, the only thing I can think is that the editing team skimmed it and called it good, gave some feedback, and then just stepped away, because there's no way that if someone actually went through and read this page by page, that there would be this many editing errors, especially for a trad published book. That being said, my honest opinion of these 15 chapters was I enjoyed it because of how not great it was. Okay? I don't want to call anyone's work bad, even when it is. Did this book feel like AI? It did. At times. A lot of times, actually. There was points in this book where dialogue would be broken up. Like, you could have just had a conversation. And that's what this book is missing, is conversation. Still, up to 15 chapters in, there was no conversation. There was a line of dialogue, a paragraph of either expo, pity party, retrospective, whatever, another line of paragraph, or dialogue, a line of dialogue, and then another chunk paragraph of pity party, retrospective, expo dumping, whatever. Like, just give me pages of dialogue. Dialogue is what makes your story, okay? I don't need 15 chapters of them feeling bad for themselves or about themselves, or disliking the other person, but not enough to actually hate them and want them dead, but like just enough to want to fist fight them, I guess. Like, give me dialogue. I'm a sucker for dialogue. I am a character-driven story girly all the way. Plot, while it is good, can only carry you so far if your characters are doing absolutely nothing, okay? This book has no character. This book also has no plot. Alright? I don't know where we're going. I don't know what's happening. I know we need to get from Ilya to Dor, get paid in, and hand back to Ilya. And that's about it. What happens in between, it's whatever, because this book has no plot. It has a bingo sheet that it's trying to get off. Knife to the throat, kiss scene, you know, like all these different little things, like enemies to lovers, but they weren't even enemies to lovers in this book, because they weren't even trying very hard to kill each other. Like, it has all these little, like, boxes that it's trying to check, but then nothing else is happening. Like, none of your characters are developing at all. The only character who has had any significant personality change is Kit, and he is not your main character. Your main characters should be changing as much as your side characters, if not more, because they are the people we spend the most time with. But that is just simply not happening, okay? That is why character-driven stories typically do so well, is because we can connect to that person. We either feel sympathy or empathy, or we feel the sadness, we feel the happiness. You know, that's what we connect with on a level, like on a basis, is the human connection. But there was no human connection in this book because these people do not feel like people. They feel like plot devices. Your characters should not feel like plot devices. So that's my review of that for now. I can't renew the book. I've tried. I redesigned the covers for these books on Canva while listening to Reads with Rachel's video on this book. Reads with Rachel is my go-to booktuber. Like, she is my go-to booktuber. So I was listening to her video on this while redesigning my covers. So I'll put them right here. All the covers that I redesigned. Are they good? No. No, they're not. But do I think that they have more purpose or more kind of continuity with their story? A little bit, maybe. In the first one, I used like the forest. In the second, for the second, I used the desert, and then for the third, I used water because I just decided to use water. And I just did flowers, and I did 2 flowers. The first one actually is forget-me-nots. I did 2 on each cover, kind of juxtaposed to each other to represent Peyton and the other to represent Kai, because this is a dual POV book for the most part. And so you have the 2 flowers, and then you have the title, and then you have like the border, and I did the border through all 3, as well as like the 2 opposing flowers through all 3, and the only thing that really changed was like the background, because they all need to look similar, which is why Reckless and Powerless look so similar, even though the cover for Reckless really has nothing to do with the story at all. I just wanted to redesign them because I thought it'd be fun, and I thought it'd be like a fun little thing to shove at the end of this like video essay thing, I guess. Tell me what you think of my redesigns. I'm not going to get into cover design or anything like that, but if you want me to, hit me up in the comments. I'll create a Fiverr account, I guess. It was nice to talk to you, bestie, about this book and vent to you, but boy, did it take it out of me. I'm gonna go watch more YouTube or something. I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do later today? What are you doing? That's very nice. I love that for you. Anyway, I'm gonna go. I'll talk to you later. Love you. Bye.